If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21, Result. Villain's Hideout. Mechamaru sat on the workbench while his hands moved systematically. The fake fight seemed to not have been well received. Turning his head, he looked at the channel which only covered Hero Killer Stain. What went wrong? Were the heroes not scared enough? Perhaps Kuraki should have used even more of his telekinesis to keep them down. Mechamaru's mind kept thinking as he picked up a tool. The emitting evil pressure was artificially created by releasing large amounts of cursed energy and telekinesis to create a feeling of dread. With a sizzling sound, sparks started flying out everywhere. Or should we have used more power? Maybe burned a few heroes for the show? Break the area using telekinesis. Mechamaru kept thinking. He needs to understand why the media wasn't showing his battle against himself when he clearly made the effort to pose well at several street cameras. So that he can improve for the next one. Mechamaru's hands stopped moving. He grabbed the small gaming console he was repairing and handed it to the excited Shigaraki, who was waiting patiently at the side. Thank you, Mechamaru. You're the best. Mechamaru's gaze lingered on Shigaraki's back for a moment before turning back towards the TV channel displaying the Hero Killer Stain. He's not even a tenth of as strong as I am. Mechamaru complained in his mind. So what does he have that I don't? Conviction? That's what he said in the anime. But how to copy conviction, how to fake it, to make everyone remember? Mechamaru's orb-like unblinking eyes kept staring at the distance. Haha, you seem to be struggling with something, Mechamaru. A familiar creepy voice entered Mechamaru's ears, making him turn back to look at the empty television screen. Since you helped Shigaraki, how about I guide you? A small piece of advice from an elder, ha ha ha. All for one, this was the first time he was speaking directly with him. Tell me, Mechamaru, what is it you are really after? Does he know something? Mechamaru wondered in his mind. Then he quickly threw the thought out of his mind. There was no way for All for One to know anything. Now tell me, Mechamaru, your desire. All for One's creepy voice rang out throughout the place. Looking quietly at the TV screen, Mechamaru opened his mouth before speaking. I want to be feared. The TV screen flickered. I want to be remembered. Mechamaru continued in his indifferent tone as he spread out his hands. By everyone. A silence descended upon the room. It stayed for some time before All for One's voice finally came back from the TV. Fear and remembrance are tools, not goals. An invisible power seems to spread from the TV. If you truly wish to leave a mark, focus on power and control. Mechamaru listened calmly. History remembers those who shape it, not those who merely crave its attention. Until All for One's voice disappeared. Mechamaru got up from his seat and started walking towards the exit. In the end, the feeling of despair wasn't strong enough, it wasn't powerful enough to make them forget about everything and only focus on me. Mechamaru walked out of the place with new plans brewing in his mind. After he was gone, the TV screen flickered once more. There is still no clue about your background, Mechamaru. Chapter 22, Recovery. P.S. I edited Chapter 20, it's not so edgy anymore, you can reread if you want. With an empty look in his eyes, Kuraki kept staring blankly out of the window. Just a moment ago his innocence was stolen from him. An old hag kissed him 26 times. 26 fucking times. That was his first kiss. And she took it from him. With that stretchable mouth of hers. I'll remember this recovery girl. Kuraki made a mental note to himself to never act like a shounen protagonist who gets beaten then gains everyone's favor ever again. Never. No chance. His body can never forget this trauma. Just then the room slid open, revealing a familiar figure in a green and white dress. The police have gone away, how are you feeling? Hero Scarlet asked as she closed the door and entered the room holding a poly bag in hand. I feel all right now. Kuraki replied while staring at the polu bag in her hand. I brought what you asked. She took out packets of snacks from the bag and handed them to Kuraki. Thanks for the trouble. Kuraki received them gladly, opened one up and started enjoying its taste. Seeing the scene, Hero Scarlet couldn't help but complain in her mind in a low voice. He's completely different from before, he is a kid after all. She thought in her mind. But still. It was quite nice, seeing this side of him. You know the doctor said to avoid any junk food. Kuraki replied with a smile. Then we are a partner in crime. Humph. Who's your partner in crime? Of course it's you. You. Hero Scarlet raised her hand and lightly hit Kurakai's head. I convinced the police not to tell your mother, but are you sure about this? Why give her any unnecessary worry? That's true, wait. Don't try to make it sound like what you did was not a big thing. Haha, that's even more for a reason not to inform her. Hero Scarlet fell silent, using her hand she lightly rubbed Kurakai's hair. Although he normally acted like a child, when it came down to it he was highly perceptive. She didn't know whether it was a good or bad thing. Withdrawing her hand, Hero Scarlet turned around and said, I need to go back to work now. She stopped at the ward's door before continuing. I have left my number in your phone, if you need anything help then make sure to give me a call. I will. Kuraki said as he waved her goodbye. But Hero Scarlet didn't leave. Instead, she stood still at the door and kept looking at him for a moment before releasing her breath and saying in a small voice. And thank you, once again. Kuraki simply smiled in return and kept waving his hand. Giving him one last look, Hero Scarlet left the room. After seeing that she was gone, Kuraki's smile instantly left his face as he yawned in boredom. Finally gone, it was getting a little hard to continue acting. Kuraki munched down on his snack. But just when he thought he would be able to get some real rest time. Bam! With a loud sound, the ward's door was slammed open. Kuraki-kun. Who else could it be? But his fellow classmates Midoriya, Todoroki, Ida, even Eraserhead? The corners of Kuraki's mouth twitched as he watched them unceremoniously enter his room. Midoriya asked, Kuraki-kun, are you okay? Kuraki replied, yes. Ida asked, Kuraki, I think the villain who beat you up might be an accomplice of Hero Killer Stain. Kuraki, I don't know. Todoroki said, my dad said you should simply focus on rest, he will send you the internship completion letter later. Kuraki simply returned a smile. Then the four of them started chatting with each other, they were after all the patient's information the same hospital. Of course, it was mostly Kuraki simply nodding every now and then and the other three going on and on by themselves. Perhaps feeling a little annoyed, Teacher Eraserhead suddenly interjected. Okay, stop, let me talk. The three instantly fell silent. Eraserhead looked at Kuraki. I told you to take care of yourself. Yes, sensei. But you failed to do so. Yes, sensei. Will you do it again? Yes, sensei. No, I won't, sensei. Eraserhead picked his nose and clicked his tongue in annoyance. So how do you plan to pass the written exam? Since you have hardly attended any classes. Hey! Chapter 23, Newcomers. Kuraki looked at the sample questions with doubt in his eyes. Isn't this too easy? He couldn't help but turn to look at Eraserhead, who had one-sidedly decided to give him extra classes to help prepare for the written exam. What? Is it too hard? Perhaps we should start from the basics. Kuraki raised an eyebrow, looked down at the sample paper in his hands, then looked back at Eraserhead's confused face. Tell me what you can't understand, then we'll start from there. Wonderful. Simply wonderful. You really think I, someone who can create a city-sized Gundam, am unable to solve these basic calculus questions? Good. Very good. Eraserhead, allow me, a jujutsu mechanical master, to open your eyes to the difference between people. 20 minutes later. What happened, sensei? Are you unable to answer my question? Kuraki grinned and spoke in a sarcastic tone. Teacher Eraserhead's eyes twitched continuously. How about we reverse roles? You be the student, and I be the teacher. It seems more appropriate after all. The pen in Eraserhead's hand snapped. This kid. He has such a vicious mouth. After cursing a few times in his mind, Eraserhead calmed down and turned to look at Kuraki's smug expression. This kid. He's excellent in both theory and practicals. Forget excellent, he's simply a monster. Eraserhead shook his head, stood up, and turned to leave. It seemed his help was unneeded. What happened, sensei? Are you taking a bathroom break? You won't secretly try to search for the answers online, will you? Bam! With a loud noise, Eraserhead shut the door and left. In no time, the hero internship week came to an end. Kuraki-kun, I heard you got into an accident. It's a rumor, Frogo. Rumor. Azui felt confused. Turning her head, she looked at Midoriya. Meeting her gaze, Midoriya hurriedly shook his head in denial. But Midoriya-kun said. Kuraki interjected, Midoriya is delusional. Delusional. Azui once again looked back at Midoriya. He seemed heartbroken. Azui hurriedly avoided Midoriya's pitiful gaze. Well, as long as you're okay. Yes. Thank you for your care, Frogo. Actually, Kuraki-kun, my name is not Frogo. Azui muttered in a small voice. Okay, Frogo. You didn't listen at all. Azui puffed her cheeks in annoyance. She wanted to retort, but seeing Kurakai's shining smile, she suddenly blushed and went back to her seat. Seeing Azui leave, Momo hesitated for a moment before calling out to Kuraki. Kuraki-kun, you're amazing. You got first place in today's quiz. It's all luck, Kuraki replied, waving his hand. Luck. Kuraki-kun, it wasn't an MCQ-based test. I just remembered something. Kuraki suddenly clapped his hands together, shocking Momo. Under her bewildered gaze, Kuraki turned his seat around and sat facing her, resting his arm on her desk. Momo involuntarily blushed because of the sudden close proximity. What is it, Kuraki-kun? Instead of replying, Kuraki started tapping her desk with his finger while staring straight into her eyes. What? What? Momo grew more and more confused. She hurriedly avoided his intense gaze, wondering if she had done something wrong. Then, suddenly, Kuraki's voice broke the silence. Momo, do you know what you did wrong? What? Did I do something? Yes. A sad expression appeared on Kuraki's face, making Momo feel bad. Wait, Kuraki-kun. If I did something wrong, then tell me, please. I'll apologize. You. For a moment, Momo felt her heart skip a beat. But then. You didn't invite me to your house. What? Momo almost shouted, startling the class. After giving everyone an almost apologetic look, Momo hurriedly placed her mouth beside Kuraki's ear and whispered, That's it. That's it, hey? So it was a small thing to you, Kuraki replied. I feel hurt, Momo. Kuraki pointed at other students. You clearly invited them but didn't even ask me. That's because you're the top scorer. Why would you need extra classes? Momo screamed in her mind. I thought we were friends. It seems I was mistaken. Kuraki's expression turned extremely sad, as if he had been betrayed by a close friend. And no. Don't be sad, Kuraki-kun. You are, of course, welcome to come to my house. So I can also come. Yes, of course. You won't pretend not to know me when I arrive, right? I won't. Absolutely not. Kuraki suddenly smiled. Thank you, Momo. You're indeed my friend. Momo sighed in relief, feeling as though she had dodged a major bullet. Kuraki also smiled and made a mental note to himself as he made a new discovery. It is fun to see beautiful girls panic. But he felt it wasn't right to keep this knowledge to himself. After all, knowledge should be shared for the development of society. So, Kuraki did what he should. Momo, you look cute when panicked. Kuraki said it casually. What? 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 Momo's brain short-circuited. Chapter 24, Momo, you need a stay-at-home husband? Kuraki, Jiro, Kaminari, and Kirishima stood in front of Momo's luxury traditional Japanese noble-like house. I didn't know Momo was a rich girl. Kaminari shouted, his eyes wide in excitement as he looked around, taking in the size of the sprawling property. Well, it was big, there was no end in sight. Shooch, must be nice living in such a big place. Kirishima said, his eyes sparkling with admiration. Jiro couldn't help but glance at Kuraki, who was staring at the enormous door, lost in thought. Although it might be a bit inappropriate to ask, she said cautiously, but... Kuraki-kun, why are you here? Since you think it's inappropriate to ask, then don't, Kaminari responded, his tone calm, almost dismissive. What? Hey, I wasn't talking to you. Jiro snapped, her face turning red. She quickly connected her earphones to Kaminari's body, zapping him with a mild shock. Wait, Jiro. Kaya. Kaminari yelped, wincing as his body jolted from the shock. Kuraki, still staring ahead, was completely unfazed by the chaos around him. Jiro couldn't help but notice how composed he was, in stark contrast to the excited murmurs of her other friends. It was as if he was in a different world, unaffected by the extravagant property and the beautiful surroundings. "Hey, Kuraki, is something wrong?" Kirishima asked, noticing his stillness. Before Kuraki could respond, the electronic buzz from the front door signaled an incoming guest. A familiar voice echoed out. "Everyone! I am sorry to have kept you waiting." The front door swung open, and there stood Momo, dressed in a stunning traditional dress that immediately caught the attention of everyone. "Oh! It's Momo!" Kaminari and Kirishima exclaimed in unison, their eyes practically glowing as they admired her appearance. Jiro shot them both a look, narrowing her eyes at their obvious admiration. "Perverts!" she muttered under her breath. Kaminari and Kirishima, totally oblivious to Jiro's glare, followed Momo inside the house, their eyes glued to her attire. Kuraki-kun seems the most normal here, Jiro thought to herself, noting how Kuraki was simply observing everything around him, not distracted by the luxury. He wasn't fazed by the giant property, nor did he seem to care about the expensive decor. Even Jiro, who considered herself fairly composed, couldn't resist sneaking a glance at the surroundings from time to time. Only Kuraki remained focused, his attention always forward, as if nothing else mattered. "Then everyone, shall we start?" Momo asked, her hands folded together as she addressed the group. After receiving nods of agreement, she continued. "How about we start with a little doubt session? This will help me gauge everyone's level." Just as Momo was about to continue, Kuraki raised his hand. Momo blinked, clearly surprised. "That? Kuraki-kun, we're not in class, so there's no need to raise your hand like that, and I don't think I can help solve your doubt." "Sorry." Kaminari, ever the joker, quickly interjected, "Momo, only you can answer his question." "What? Really?" Momo replied, her curiosity piqued. "That?" Kuraki began, his voice serious. "Do you have a brother or sister?" Momo blinked, clearly confused. "I don't understand." "Do you have a sibling?" Kuraki clarified, his tone unwavering. "Siblings? No, I'm an only child," Momo replied, still unsure of where this was going. "But, how is that related to the study session?" "I've heard enough," Kuraki suddenly declared, standing up abruptly. The rest of the group looked at him in surprise. Hey, Kuraki, what's going on?" Kirishima asked, his voice full of concern. Ignoring Kirishima, Kuraki marched over to Momo, grabbing her hand with an unexpectedly serious expression. "Momo, let's get married." "Www what?" Momo gasped, almost falling from her seat. Kuraki held her hand firmly, making sure she didn't fall. Momo, wide-eyed, looked around frantically, searching for help. Kuraki! What are you doing?" Jiro jumped up, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Aren't you and Azui already a thing? Is Kuraki that fickle?" Jiro thought, her mind racing. Has money really blinded his eyes? I was wrong to trust him. All men are trash. Meanwhile, Kuraki was continuing his pitch. "We're the same age, I'm 5 feet 11 inches, I don't have any bad habits. Except for a few," he thought privately. "My telekinesis ability is strong, and I believe I could be the number 2 or 3 hero in the future. I think we'd be perfect together." Momo's head spun from the sheer audacity of it all. "Kuraki, please stop." She stammered, her face bright red. Before Kuraki could say more, Kirishima patted him on the shoulder, forcing him to stop. "All right, Kuraki, stop teasing her. Momo's getting uncomfortable." Kuraki paused, then looked at Momo with a serious expression. "It wasn't a joke. You can consider it." Momo's face flushed even more. I don't see you that way, Kuraki-kun." "Ah, well, that's a shame," Kuraki said, his voice tinged with mock regret. He released her hand and returned to his seat as though nothing had happened. Kirishima couldn't help but shake his head. Well, that was unexpected. Despite the chaos, the study session carried on, and surprisingly, things went smoothly. Kuraki began explaining a complex concept, and even Kirishima and Kaminari couldn't help but admire his knowledge. Wow, he's actually good, they both thought. Kuraki's detailed explanations left everyone in awe. Even Momo, one of the top students in their class, was impressed by the depth of Kuraki's understanding. She couldn't explain things with the same level of clarity. As everyone settled in, Kuraki casually added, "So, Momo, considering my theoretical knowledge, how about? Please, Kuraki-kun, no more random bombs." The group shouted in unison. Kuraki only shrugged, unfazed by their reactions. "I was just going to ask for some funding to build a Gundam. I didn't think it would cause this much of a reaction." The group groaned in exasperation. Meanwhile, in a villain hideout, Mechamaru was plotting. "Let's rob a bank," Mechamaru suggested nonchalantly. Shigaraki and Kurogiri looked at him in surprise. "Why a bank?" "Because we're poor," Mechamaru replied with a shrug, pointing to their rundown base. "And I want to build something." Shigaraki's eyes lit up. "Oh? What are you going to build?" Just then, the TV flickered on, and All for One's amused voice echoed through the room. "Rob a bank? Sounds like a great learning experience." Chapter 25, Making Money the Legit Way. Not just anyone can become a villain. Fire. There's a fire. To become one, you need a goal, a motive to keep you going. Save me. Kaie. Save me. A goal powerful enough to justify yourself to none other than yourself. Amazing. You're amazing, Mechamaru. Shigaraki shouted in excitement, seeing Mechamaru standing in the middle of the bank's reception, surrounded by burning people everywhere. He didn't even move a finger. In the blink of an eye, every person surrounding Mechamaru simply ignited in flames. He, let me help you." Shigaraki's eyes turned crescent as he raised his hand toward the stunned bank employee. Under her horrified gaze, Shigaraki's hand approached her face. But just before Shigaraki could turn her to dust, a flame ignited on the employee's body, making her scream in fear and roll around in an attempt to extinguish it. "It seems you got her first, Mechamaru. Let's focus on breaking the vault first." "Okay." Shigaraki replied cheerfully before making his way toward the sealed doors. Mechamaru gave the burning people a look. By now, all of them had fallen, motionless, with flames continuously burning on their bodies. If he wanted, he could have turned them to ash in an instant, but that wasn't his goal. He stopped burning a very minute layer of their skin before halting the flames. The sudden burning sensation was enough to shock them into unconsciousness while sparing them from severe harm. Perhaps it was the last shred of conscience he retained, or maybe it was his greed for harvesting faith points from them. Either way, he didn't plan to kill anyone. "You, monster!" Mechamaru turned his head after hearing the loud voice. A man in a chicken outfit appeared at the front gate of the bank. It was a hero. Mechamaru looked at the unknown hero with his green, orb-like eyes. "You! I'll bring you just a arg." Before the chicken hero could do anything, his body was covered in flames, burning his skin and making him scream in pain. His miserable, struggling figure was reflected clearly in Mechamaru's green eyes. Before executing the heist, Mechamaru had carefully chosen the bank's location. It was far from the reach of most major heroes. By now, the chicken hero had stopped screaming, and silence once again filled the room. After some time, "It's done, Mechamaru. We've collected all the money." Shigaraki waved at Mechamaru while exiting the bank's vault. Mechamaru nodded at him, then looked at the surveillance camera that had been recording everything until now. With a single glance, the camera burst into flames and disintegrated. "Let's go," Kurogiri said as his shadow flickered and covered both Mechamaru and Shigaraki before they disappeared. While they vanished with all the money, the police outside continued to vigilantly watch the bank's entrance. It was inevitable. Kurogiri's ability was just too convenient. Back at the villain's hideout, Mechamaru was sorting through the cash, gold, and other valuables they had stolen. "I've informed the dealer," Kurogiri said. Mechamaru nodded and got up. But just as he was about to leave, a hand rested on his shoulder, followed by an excited voice. Hey, Mechamaru, how long will it take to create that super robot you told me about?" Shigaraki's eyes shone as he asked the question. Mechamaru looked at him. Shigaraki had agreed to rob the bank because Mechamaru told him about the super robot. Without that incentive, he wouldn't have been able to convince Shigaraki, who only wanted to destroy everything. And if Shigaraki hadn't agreed, neither would Kurogiri nor the dealer who would help them procure the parts. "A month? If we can get all the parts. Kurogiri, tell the dealer to hurry up." Shigaraki commanded excitedly. "Yes, Shigaraki. UA Class 1A Exam Hall." With his head resting on his hand, Kuraki closed his eyes and silently enjoyed the morning sunshine streaming through the window. Meanwhile, everyone else in the class concentrated heavily on the exam in front of them. The questions are the same as Kuraki said. Jiro's eyes sparkled as she stared at the paper with questions identical to those Kuraki had taught them. Her hands trembled with excitement. For the first time in her life, she felt she could get good grades. Jiro wasn't the only one feeling this way. Kaminari and Kirishima were equally thrilled, mentally thanking Kuraki for his help. Even Momo couldn't help but steal glances at Kuraki from time to time. Seeing his carefree attitude as if the exam didn't matter at all left her with an inexplicable sense of defeat. Strength, looks, intelligence, character. Kuraki-kun is perfect in every area, she thought. Kuraki's strange behavior suddenly flashed through her mind. Well, maybe his character is a little crooked. Momo shook her head to erase the thought, focusing back on her test. After everyone had completed their papers, they submitted their answer sheets to Teacher Eraser one by one. When it was Kuraki's turn, he handed his sheet to Teacher Eraser with a smirk and whispered, "Try harder next time." Eraserhead's face darkened instantly. He nearly crumpled the answer sheet in frustration but held back. He still had to grade it. Kuraki's test was different from the others. Eraserhead had stayed up all night crafting a custom paper specifically for him, determined to see the kid struggle. But Kuraki had finished it in just 5 minutes, his relaxed demeanor infuriating the teacher. "You might as well frame it," Kuraki quipped before returning to his seat. Crack! The sudden sound of something breaking caught everyone's attention. Eraserhead's office. Eraserhead sat silently, staring at Kuraki's answer sheet. It was impeccable. Every answer was correct. The kid was a genius. But instead of anger, Eraserhead felt something different. "This kid, he's something else," he muttered with a rare smile. Chapter 25, New Teammates. Outside the villain's hideout. A strange group stood together, looking entirely out of place. A pale-looking girl in a school uniform, a man with half his face burned, a magician cosplayer, a lizardman, a guy dressed in black with white stripes, and finally, a woman who looked more like a man. Himiko Toga, Dabi, Mr. Compass, Spinner, Twice, and Magni. Jiren looked at the villains he had carefully selected, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Despite the short notice, the quality of recruits was guaranteed. After giving them one last look, Jiren raised his hand to open the door to the villain's hideout. But, he couldn't open it. "What is this?" Jiren's eyes narrowed, his gaze locked on the seemingly ordinary wooden door. Raising his hand, he felt the surface. "Wait! This isn't wood. It's metal." His eyes quickly moved to the door handle, where he noticed a fingerprint scanner. Curiosity sparked in Jiren's mind, but just as he was about to speak, the door clicked open. "Come in, Jiren." Hearing the familiar voice, Jiren relaxed, forcing his usual fake smile as he pushed the door open. "Shigariki-san, you must know the league values you greatly. That's why I assembled this team so quickly." Jiren's voice trailed off and froze. The reason? The complete transformation of the villain's hideout. The bar had become a futuristic sanctuary of menace, with sleek black walls glowing with pulsating neon blue circuitry. A transparent counter glowed faintly, shifting with holographic patterns as luminous bottles floated above in defiance of gravity. Soft ambient lighting bathed the room, accompanied by the faint hum of hidden machinery. Digital screens on the walls displayed cryptic symbols and mission data, giving the space an air of constant vigilance. Kurogiri stood behind the counter, his warp mist swirling ominously, exuding an oppressive aura. Mechamaru sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, his green eyes focused on the blueprint in his hand. In the middle of it all sat Shigaraki, perched on a floating chair with his hands resting on his lap. His old, tattered outfit seemed chaotic against the sleek, futuristic surroundings. For a moment, Jiren forgot to breathe. The next moment, he masked his shock and smiled, relying on his professional instincts. "He, Shigariki-san, it seems a lot has changed since my last visit." Hearing his words, Shigariki's lips curled into a wild, unconcealed grin. Sitting on the auto-adjusting chair, watching the surprise on his guests' faces, filled him with a strange exhilaration. "Wow! Is this really the League of Villains?" Shigaraki turned his head to the pale girl in the school uniform Himiko Toga. She looked around excitedly, her eyes sparkling like stars. "It's YAAAI better than the abandoned house I used to live in." "Humph! So what? It only shows they've got a lot of money. I'm here because of Hero Killer Stain. Shigaraki's eyes narrowed at the mention of the detestable name. The speaker was Spinner, a human-lizard hybrid. For a moment, Shigaraki wanted to reduce him to dust but remembered his friend's advice. He focused instead on the group. His eyes landed on Dabi. There's a familiar face, Shigaraki muttered. Dabi smiled silently, offering no reply. Pleased to make your acquaintance. I am Mr. Compass, descendant of the Bandit King. Mr. Compass removed his hat and bowed theatrically. I'm Magni, the last member said plainly. Hehe, Shigaraki-san, I can vouch for their abilities. If you have no issues, I'll take my leave now, Jiren said, seeing Shigaraki nod in approval. Despite his irritation with the stain incident, Shigaraki couldn't deny Jiren's competence. Hey, Shigaraki-kun. Are we part of your team now? Can I touch that? That. Himiko Toga pointed at the floating holographic display, bouncing with excitement. Shigaraki ignored her. Yay! Thank you. Toga took his silence as permission and dashed toward the hologram, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. The others soon joined, exploring their new surroundings. But then Shigaraki's voice cut through the room. Just remembered two things. The group turned toward him. I am the leader, he stated firmly. And my friend. He gestured toward Mechamaru. Is the second in command. All eyes fell on Mechamaru, who remained seated, studying the blueprint. Toga was the first to react. Hello, Shigaraki's friend. I'm Toga. She extended her hand toward Mechamaru. Mechamaru lowered the blueprint and looked at her with his glowing green eyes. Grasping her delicate hand with his cold, metallic one, he stood up. My name is Mechamaru. After giving the group a brief glance, he began to sit back down when Toga suddenly leaned into his vision. Hey, Mechamaru. She asked, narrowing her eyes. Why can't I sense any blood from you? A tense silence filled the room. Stop bothering him, or I'll kill you, Shigaraki's cold voice cut through, making everyone freeze. I was just playing, Shigaraki-kun. I didn't mean to bother Mechamaru. It's all right, Mechamaru said, waving his hand dismissively. Really? Yay. Mechamaru, can I be your friend? Of course, he replied simply. Hehe. To everyone's surprise, Mechamaru patted Toga's head. Feeling confused, she glanced up at him, only to find him addressing the group. I am your friend, Mechamaru. Chapter 26, Behind the Scenes. A few days ago. All Might, that kid is suspicious. We need to take action, said a man in formal attire, wearing glasses, in a grave tone as he sat opposite the symbol of peace. All Might didn't refute his words, but he didn't agree either. Seeing this, All Might's sidekick, Nightai, adjusted his glasses before speaking. As your chosen successor mentioned, Kuraki approached him and revealed information he shouldn't have known unless he had been following you. He paused before continuing in a calm voice. He handed you this DNA report and even deliberately used words to provoke a reaction from you. His actions mirror those of a spy, though his motives remain unclear. You should also note, All Might, that the location and timing of the disaster dome were confidential, known only to a select few. Nightai's voice grew sharper. Given that the teachers have been our trusted colleagues for years, it's more plausible that the spy is one of the students. All Might sighed and raised the DNA report in his hand, reviewing it for what felt like the 100th time. But Kuraki-kun helped the students and even saved me. That's precisely why I said his motives are difficult to determine. Nightai frowned, deep in thought. No matter how much he analyzed the situation, he couldn't find a convincing reason for Kuraki's actions. Is it truly just a coincidence? Nightai shook his head. He didn't believe in such superficial explanations. Though he wanted to interrogate Kuraki directly, the conflicted expression on All Might's face stopped him. For now, his suspicion hadn't reached the point of taking drastic measures, but if it came to that, he wouldn't hesitate. Present day. Let me ask again, Teacher Midnight. Are you really not doing this because of a personal grudge? Of course not, Student Kuraki. This is purely to educate the students. Humph. So I'm supposed to believe it wasn't your idea to make me face a teacher alone while forbidding me from using my quirk. Hero Midnight simply responded with a bright smile and waved her whip threateningly. Kuraki nimbly dodged the attack and created some distance. But instead of slowing down, her attacks only increased in frequency, making it seem less like a test and more like she was hunting a villain. Unfortunately for her, even without his telekinesis, Kurakai's physical fitness, bolstered by cursed energy, far surpassed Hero Midnight's. While dodging, Kurakai spoke casually. "Teacher Midnight, I can see through that fake smile of yours. Deep down inside, I know you're sad." "Silence, brat! Just die." In the observation room, the corners of Eraserhead's mouth twitched as he watched Midnight's villainous smile on the screen. A student asked hesitantly, "Teacher Eraser, is Midnight-sensei okay?" Eraserhead chose to ignore the question entirely. "MUDA. MUDA. 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 Teacher, is that a JoJo reference?" "Shut up." Back in the arena, Midnight grinned as she released a pink pheromone-filled mist, blocking Kurakai's escape routes. "Let's see where you'll run now, brat." Kurakai remained calm, locking his gaze on the approaching whip. "This is what you get for what?" Midnight's words halted mid-sentence as she realized the end of her whip was now in Kurakai's grip. "You. Mine." With a quick tug, Kurakai disarmed Midnight, leaving her whip in his hand. Instead of panicking, Midnight smirked confidently. "You've lost, kid." She declared this with certainty, knowing her pheromones had completely surrounded him. But just as she thought victory was hers, an unsettling voice interrupted. "I'm sorry, but, what's lost?" "What?" Midnight's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't comprehend how Kurakai remained unaffected by her quirk. Before she could question him, Kurakai grinned. "It's my turn now, teacher." Raising the whip, Kurakai lashed it down, landing a precise hit on Midnight's rear. But instead of an angry outburst, a sensual moan escaped her lips. "HMHM." Kurakai froze in horror, almost dropping the whip. In the observation room, the students watching were utterly speechless. Meanwhile, Eraserhead was already sprinting toward the arena to stop the madness. After the exam, barely passing, Midoriya sat quietly on a mall bench, replaying the key moments in his mind. For some reason, a familiar girl's face appeared, causing him to blush. "Oh! Is that a UA student? Wow, I've met a celebrity." Midoriya looked up, embarrassed, only for a slim arm to wrap around his shoulder. Turning, his heart sank. It was a face he knew too well. The villain with the power of decay. Shigaraki grinned. With a single thought, "I could turn you to dust." Fear consumed Midoriya, but before he could scream, another arm wrapped around Shigaraki's neck. "Wow, isn't this the leader of the villains? I caught a big one." Shigaraki froze as Kurakai restrained him effortlessly. "Kurakai-kun!" Midoriya cried out, overwhelmed with gratitude. But before anyone could react further, a cold metallic voice cut through the air. "And what do you think you're doing to my best friend?" The temperature seemed to drop as Mechamaru stepped into view, wrapping his cold metal arm around Kurakai's shoulder. The roles reversed yet again. "Mechamaru," Shigaraki shouted with joy in his mind. "Kei Kurakai-kun," Midoriya muttered in a fearful voice. On the other hand, both Kurakai and Mechamaru grinned in their minds. "Congratulations on collecting 1000 faith points, receiving Gojo Satoru's ability 6 Eyes. Chapter 27, I? Me? You? Who? Me?" A four-way connection was formed between Midoriya, Shigaraki, Kurakai, and Mechamaru. With one arm on each other's shoulder, it wasn't long before some passerby noticed them. But thinking it to be a friendly children's activity, they simply laughed and went on their way. Unfortunately, the situation was far from being a friendly activity. "Release my friend, or burn to ash," Mechamaru said in a cold mechanical voice, staring straight at Kurakai, his hand glowing in red light. "Tell the hand face to let go first." Kurakai wasn't one to back down either, the air trembled with his voice, bringing forth an indescribable pressure. With both of their gazes colliding in mid-air, an invisible spark flew out. Midoriya clenched his fist and silently said in his mind, "I need to help Kurakai-kun." Shigaraki's finger twitched, while he crazily shouted in his mind, "Do it, Mechamaru! Burn them!" Kurakai barely suppressed the laughter that was threatening to rush out of his mouth. He could almost smell the crazily increasing faith points. Especially after the crazy reward he just received. Letting out a stream of air from his mouth, Mechamaru asked, "It seems you have chosen death. Kei Kurakai-kun." "Yes, Mechamaru. I can crush his skull faster than you can use your power. Shigaraki's head moved towards them under Kurakai's quirk, giving him a better look at the situation. Hearing his words, Mechamaru's head lowered, it seemed he was hesitating. Seeing the scene, Shigaraki's eyes shone crazily and his struggle increased, but it was useless, Kurakai's telekinesis was too strong. The tension increased. Finally, after some time, Mechamaru slowly lowered his hand and said, "How about we all take a step back?" Kurokai hesitated for a moment before slowly moving his arm from Shigaraki's neck, though he didn't release the telekinesis. Mechamaru stared silently at Kuraki. Tisk! Audibly clicking his tongue, Kuraki suddenly moved his finger, sending Shigaraki straight towards Mechamaru. Mechamaru didn't hesitate, with nimble movement he grabbed the stunned Shigaraki and quickly ran away under the surprised eyes of the crowd. Midoriya, quickly call the authorities. Yes. Midoriya pulled out his phone and hurriedly dialed the helpline number. Only Kuraki kept staring at Mechamaru's diminishing figure until he disappeared. After the authorities came, Midoriya explained the whole incident to them. In no time the mall was closed and became a no-entry zone. Meanwhile, Kuraki silently escaped when the attention wasn't on him, leaving the area. After returning home, Kuraki hurriedly went to his room and looked at himself in the mirror. At first, everything seemed the same. But then under his control, his eyes suddenly turned blue. The power of 6 eyes activated. But that wasn't all. He also received all of Gojo's experience. Reverse curse technique. Red, blue, hollow purple. And limitless. His cursed energy level instantly shot through the roof, reaching unidentified special grade. Under the power and control of 6 eyes, his telekinesis ability improved by leaps and bounds. He instantly gained the ability to go against AFO and OFA. Maybe even beat them. Of course, that is when he isn't taking the domain into consideration. If the domain was also used, instant kill. Perhaps with their versatile power, AFO can still somehow survive Yago's domain, but unlimited void, he doubted it to be possible. An uncontrolled smile formed on Kurakai's face, and then under his control his eyes returned to normal. At the same time, in the villain's hideout, Mechamaru's green orb-like eyes turned blue. It seems only one body can use 6 eyes at a time. They both thought in their mind. Although 6 eyes can only be used one at a time, the same was not true for limitless, red, blue, and hollow purple. Both of them can use their powers by utilizing cursed energy, it's just very expensive to maintain limitless without 6 eyes. Mechamaru's eyes turned back green again. Then he looked at the silent Shigaraki for a moment before going back to his workshop. His robot construction was almost half done. Shigaraki glanced at Mechamaru's retreating figure before saying under his breath, "Thank you, Mechamaru." For some reason, seeing that familiar metallic figure made a feeling of small warmth appear in his heart. This time Shigaraki truly felt. It wasn't bad to have reliable friends. "Nene Tamura-kun. Can you get me this dress? Pretty please? Look, it's all red and super cute." Shigaraki ignored her. It seemed the reliable statement only worked with Mechamaru for now. "Come on now. Don't ignore me." Toga acted cute, but seeing that she was getting no reaction from Shigaraki, she pouted and left. "Humph, cheap steak. I'll just ask my friend Mechamaru." Looking down at the blood-colored metallic gloves in her hands, Toga couldn't help but smile. "This is for you." "Oh ho! Mecha-chan. Is this a gift? For me? Are you proposing? It has an inbuilt syringe that will burst out and suck your opponent's blood." "What? Really? That's so cool. But can you make it red?" "Okay. You're the best, Mecha-chan." After that incident, she clearly understood who was responsible for the futuristic design of their hideout. Especially the various gaming consoles at the back, along with the massage chairs, and most of all a giant jacuzzi. Toga covered her face in excitement and made her way towards Mechamaru's workshop with large strides. It was definitely the best decision to join the villains group. Much better and more comfortable than living on the streets. Toga smiled and thought in her mind. It's almost like a family. Suddenly Toga stopped. The word family reminded her of some bad memories. "Isn't this blood pretty, Mom? Dad, it feels so warm." Toga's pace slowed down. "I told you she just doesn't listen. She keeps doing it again and again." Her cheerful expression turned gloomy. "You monster! Look, she's smiling. As if it is completely normal." Entering the workshop, Mechamaru's familiar back appeared in her vision. Sensing the movement behind him, Mechamaru turned around to see the silent Toga. Mecha-chan. A fake smile appeared on Toga's face. What do you think of blood? Mechamaru repeated, blood? I don't know, it's not something I have. Hearing his words, a confused look appeared on Toga's face, then without a moment's delay she suddenly pulled out her knife, cut through her palm, and showed the rushing blood to Mechamaru. Then what do you think of my blood? She asked in an expectant voice. Instead of replying, Mechamaru simply looked at the bleeding palm, then he suddenly stood up from his seat, went to a nearby cabinet, and took out a box from within. Ignoring the confused Toga, Mechamaru took out medicine and dressing from the box and silently patched up the cut. Toga looked absent-mindedly at the scene, not saying anything. Finally, after Mechamaru was done with the dressing, he looked back at Toga, raising his hand he patted her head and said, I think your blood is precious, so don't waste it. Rubbing her head lightly, Mechamaru took back his hand and pulled out a familiar-looking red dress from one of the drawers. Here, your birthday gift. Toga silently took the red dress which she just asked Shigaraki for. Moving her head, she looked at Mechamaru, who has turned back and started focusing on his work. How did you know? Mechamaru stopped, put down the hammer in his hand, turned his head slightly and said, Because I am your friend Mechamaru. Then he once again picked up the hammer and started making the part from his memory. Toga stared at the scene with slightly blurry eyes, unknowingly tears has formed without her knowledge. Mecha-chan. A sincere smile appeared on her face with tears falling from the corners of her eyes. It was indeed a good decision to join villains, know my new family. Chapter 28, Summer Break. Hikari Sento was in a good mood today. Her son's vacation was starting tomorrow, and having saved some money on the side, she planned to surprise him by taking him to the nearby amusement park. It had been a long time since she had taken him out somewhere, mainly due to financial constraints. But tomorrow was a day to celebrate. Especially after Kuraki started earning money from his internship, which had greatly lessened the financial burden on the household. Still, she couldn't help but wonder, why did the hero internship only pay in cash? Although it seemed a little odd, Hikari didn't mind at all. It was already a miracle for a high schooler to land a paying job in his first semester, especially one that offered such a generous salary. He must be working with a famous hero, but Kuro always avoided answering when she asked about it. He must feel shy, she thought. All in all, Hikari Sento was feeling happy for the first time in a long while. Seeing that her shift was almost over, she happily stared at the clock, waiting to check out. Suddenly, the door of the store opened, and a figure staggered inside, holding a bottle in his hand. Looking at the hooded person, a sense of unease filled her mind. Quietly, she moved her hand toward the hidden button under the counter. Her bad premonition soon came true. Heek. You, where's the alcohol? Heek. Sir, we don't sell alcohol here, Hikari replied calmly. What? Heek. What did you say? We don't have any alcohol here, she repeated firmly. You. The hood slipped off, revealing a monkey-like face flushed red from excessive drinking. That, sir. Just like everyone else, you're making fun of me. The man yelled hysterically before hurling the empty bottle at Hikari. The bottle flew toward her face. Shocked by the sudden action, Hikari instinctively raised her arms. Crack! The glass bottle shattered, sending small shards flying in all directions. That. I didn't mean to. The man stammered, suddenly realizing what he had done. Panicking, he turned and bolted out of the store. Hikari lowered her aching arm, relieved that she hadn't sustained any serious injury. After a moment's thought, she decided not to call the police. She cleaned up the broken glass, finished her shift, and left the store in a hurry. That was a little scary, she thought. When she opened the door to her house, the sight of her son sitting on the sofa playing on his phone filled her heart with warmth. Kuro. I'm back. Welcome back, mother, Kuraki replied, putting down his phone. But as soon as he turned to look at her, his brows furrowed. What happened to your cheek? Kuraki asked. Cheek. Hikari touched her face in confusion. Feeling a slight bump, she walked to the mirror to take a look. A small cut on her left cheek caught her attention. It seemed a shard of glass had grazed her skin without her noticing. I didn't even feel it. Will it leave a scar? She wondered worriedly. A hand tapped her shoulder. Turning around, she saw Kuraki staring at her silently. It's just a small cut, no need to worry, Hikari said with a smile. She gently patted his head, feeling happy about his concern. If you say so. Kurakai's expression relaxed. He helped her apply medicine to the wound, served her dinner, and then retired to his room. Meanwhile, in a dark alley. Wait. Who are you? The monkey-faced man stammered, trembling as he stared at the metallic figure before him. The figure didn't reply. Instead, it delivered a sharp kick to the man's abdomen, leaving him clutching his stomach in pain. Why? Why? The man muttered as blood dripped from his mouth. A metallic hand grabbed his hair, forcing him to look into the figure's glowing green eyes. Wait. Stop. The man pleaded. Punch. A steel fist connected with his face, disfiguring his features. The metallic figure wasn't satisfied. It raised its fist again. Punch. And again. And again. It didn't stop until the monkey-faced man's body went limp, leaving him bloody and broken with teeth scattered on the ground and his nose flattened. But just when he was about to leave, an excited voice rang out. Here you are, Mechamaru. Shigaraki walked out of the corner with a big smile on his face. Casually stepping over the unconscious monkey man as if he didn't exist, Shigaraki stood before Mechamaru and said in an excited voice. Let's go back quickly, I just got a new piece of news from our informant. It's time to make a new appearance. Mechamaru silently looked at the distortion in space, turning his head he looked down at the unconscious monkey man, after shaking his head for unknown reason he out through the distortion and disappeared. Only Shigaraki was left standing in place, he didn't appear to be in a hurry to enter the spatial distortion. My friend Mechamaru. Shigaraki grabbed the unconscious monkey man's head. You seem to restrained by morals. His eyes narrowed into a smile. But don't worry. He activated his decay. Allow me, your best friend, to help you finish your job. The monkey man turned to dust in a matter of seconds. Then the distorted shadow moved and covered Shigaraki, taking him away, leaving behind the silent dark alley. Chapter 29, Hero Wild Pussycats. In the middle of a road. Inside Yue's bus. Kuraki-kun, would you like to try some? Ashui pushed her opened lunchbox towards Kuraki, who was looking out of the window, absent-mindedly staring at the vast forest passing by. Kuraki turned his face and faced Ashui. Seeing her hopeful and slightly expectant look, he lowered his gaze and saw home-cooked sweets. Their shapes were uneven, they seemed to have been made by an amateur who just learned cooking. Picking one up, he brought it to his mouth and took a bite. Ashui stared unblinkingly at Kuraki's face, trying to discern whether he liked it or not. After Kuraki finished eating, he said, "It's too sweet." Ashui's shoulders instantly deflated. But, it was a good first try. Kuraki patted her head, consoling the deflated girl. Meanwhile, Jiro secretly stared at Kuraki and Ashui from the front. "I'm so jealous," Jiro muttered, watching them have their moment. Then, as if remembering something, she turned to look at Momo, who was sitting beside her. In Momo's hand there was also a lunchbox. She kept peeking at Kuraki from time to time as if hesitating about something. All men should burn in hell. Jiro screamed in her mind. In no time the bus stopped before an empty spot on the road. Everyone get off. Following teacher Eraserhead and Ida's lead, the students exited the bus in an orderly manner. After all of them were out, an excited voice reached their ears. "Welcome everyone." The student's gaze lands on the woman with blue eyes, and long blonde hair that's combed back save for her bangs. Her costume had a unique charm to it. Ryoko Tsuchikawa, aka Hero Pixie Bob. It's her. She's a famous hero who has saved many people from harm, Midoriya kept talking with stars in his eyes. Hero Pixie Bob nodded in satisfaction listening to his praise. "I heard she's 31 dash." Midoriya's face was suddenly blocked by a giant white cat palm. "I'm 16 at heart, okay," Hero Pixie Bob declared in a menacing tone. Midoriya hurriedly nodded to show his support. After that, Pixie Bob and teacher Aizawa started giving some explanations. "Our dwelling is right there." Teacher Aizawa pointed at a cottage far away, in the middle of the deep jungle. Suddenly a bad premonition hit everyone's heart. "Sensei, why aren't we taking the bus?" Hero Pixie Bob simply smiled in response. "That's because, this is your first test." With a loud shout, she placed her hands on the ground, using her quirk Earth Flow to suddenly send the students flying in the air. "What? The last one to reach the cottage will be punished. This is unfair." With unresigned shouts, the students of UA landed in the forest under teacher Aizawa's and hero Pixie Bob's gaze. It will be a good learning experience for them. Aizawa replied instinctively to the sudden voice. Yes, it will. But then he stopped. Because the voice sounded familiar. Turning his head, Aizawa saw Kuraki standing next to him, looking down at the students. Why am I not surprised? Teacher Aizawa shook his head and said in a tired voice. Student Kuraki, why are you here? Because I want to, Kuraki gave a perfunctory reply. Aizawa let out an audible sigh. On the other hand, hero Pixie Bob wasn't so calm. What? I was sure I got all the students. With a confused voice, she used her power and moved the earth under Kuraki's feet. Well, at least she tried to. Because no matter how many times she used her quirk, the earth underneath Kuraki refused to move. How? Hero Pixie Bob shouted in confusion. He's using his quirk telekinesis, Teacher Eraserhead said in a plain voice. It can even stop my earth flow. Hero Pixie Bob's eyes shone for a moment, then she used her maximum power to move the earth under Kuraki, and as expected she failed again. Kuraki, this is a school exercise which we have carefully planned for your growth. Hero Eraserhead's eyes glowed red. So please go down on your own or I will erase your quirk and send you down. Kuraki narrowed his eyes at Eraserhead. Under the red eyes, he could clearly feel his telekinesis quirk weakening. But everything else was completely fine. 6 eyes, Logo's power, cursed techniques. It seems only telekinesis was affected. Seeing Teacher Aizawa's eyes glowing more and more red, Kuraki raised his hands in defeat. All right, I will go, sensei. The red glow diminished. But the red glow increased. As long as you answer my question, I'll go. The red glow disappeared. Aizawa looked up and down at Kuraki, then asked. What is it? Kuraki turned his gaze to Hero Pixie Bob and pointed at her back. Is the tail real? For a moment Hero Pixie Bob was stunned. Then a large smile suddenly appeared on her face. Of course, it's real, Naya. A true warrior of the wild needs her tail to keep balance, charm, and catitude. You jealous, hey? Don't worry, kid, this tail is 100% pixie certified. She raised her tail and paw and made a cat-like gesture trying to act cute. Aizawa silently turned his gaze away from Pixie Bob, unwilling to look at her. Kuraki suddenly interjected. Then can I touch it? Hero Pixie Bob burst out laughing. Nya ha ha ha, touch it? Only if you can catch it. Naya. But be warned, I'm faster than I look. Besides, this tail is a symbol of my feline fabulousness, so handle it with care, got it? As soon as she finished speaking, Kuraki's figure vanished from her vision. Naya. Hero Pixie Bob let out a confused sound. Even Eraserhead was stunned. But then, Pixie Bob suddenly felt something grab her tail. Naya. Aizawa quickly turned his head hearing her sudden scream. But as soon as he did, he froze in place. He saw Kuraki holding onto Pixie Bob's tail, clearly getting a feel for it. It feels warm, and real. Kuraki commented. Warm? Real. Of course it's real. What did you expect, Naya? She quickly yanks her tail away, holding it protectively while giving Kuraki a flustered glare. You don't just grab a lady's tail like that, you little rascal. Do you know how sensitive it is? Humph, I should make you run laps on rocky terrain. Pixie Bob raised her hand and used her quirk. But then, nothing happened. Eraser. You were supposed to use your quirk, Pixie Bob shouted in exaggeration. Oh. Hero Eraserhead was too stunned to speak. Pixie Bob pouted dramatically and waved her tail left and right before saying to Kuraki. Student, there's a price to everything. Since you touched my tail, now you need to listen to me, ... Hearing her words, Kuraki touched his chin and asked. So if I keep listening to you, I can keep touching your tail? Instead of getting angry, Pixie Bob grinned and said in a mischievous tone. Sure, Naya. As long as you listen to me, I can let you touch it all you want. Done. Kuraki gave her a thumbs up. Aizawa looked left and right at Pixie Bob and Kuraki. After thinking for a moment, he simply turned back and got on the bus. He wasn't paid enough to handle all this. Villain's hideout. Our plan is to capture this kid. Shigaraki took out an image of Bakugo. Everyone silently memorized his face. A black portal appeared beside them. Go. Chapter 30, Villain's Attack, Part 1. Mechamaru silently stared at the members of hero group Pussycats. What are your orders? Second in command. I'm sad I mistakenly deleted the damn chapter while updating it, it was 1500 words, winky face. Chapter 31, Villain Attack, Part 1. P.S. I somehow managed to write it again, the previous version was saved on the mobile web novel app, it takes time for mobile novels to get updates, meaning the original chapter was still there for some time before it eventually gets changed. I quickly made a video of it then tried using video to text conversion which failed, so I had to manually paste screenshots in Gemini to get its text version, a lot of unnecessary and boring effort. Why am I telling you this? Cause you guys aren't giving reviews. And Power Stones. It's sad and disheartening, this fanfic doesn't even have a rating yet. After 8 hours of traversing the dense forest, the UA students finally reached their destination, a cozy, secluded cottage. You guys are here, a cheerful voice greeted them. Everyone turned their gazes toward the 4 heroes of Team Wild Pussycat, Pixie Bob, Ragdoll, Tiger, and their leader, Mandalay. But there was also a kid? As the heroes began formally introducing themselves, Izuku Midoriya noticed the quiet child standing a little apart from the group. With his usual friendly demeanor, he approached the boy. Hello, are you related to Hero Mandalay? Before he could finish his sentence. Punch! A small fist landed squarely on his nether regions. Midoriya didn't even get the chance to scream before collapsing, his soul seemingly leaving his body. Midoriya! Why would you do that? Tenya Ida hurried over, half supporting the crumpled boy while turning to admonish the young assailant. I'm sorry. This is my nephew, Kota, Mandalay interjected, stepping forward to calm the situation. Her tone was apologetic, though her eyes betrayed an understanding of her nephew's fiery temperament. Before anyone could say more, Kota abruptly turned and sprinted away. Kota! Mandalay called after him, but her voice was ignored as the boy vanished into the woods. Sighing, she shook her head and addressed the group. Everyone, get your luggage off the bus and follow me. Just as the students began moving, Azui raised a hesitant hand. Mandalay-san, one of the students hasn't arrived yet. Mandalay paused and turned, curious. Kuraki? No need to worry. He's already here. I have to say, that kid's really daring. Her lips curled into a small, knowing grin, confusing the rest of Class 1A. Anyway, follow me. She led them inside the cottage, leaving their questions unanswered. Meanwhile, in the playroom, Kuraki and Hero Eraserhead were locked in a tense table tennis match. Both played with sharp precision, though their minds were clearly elsewhere. Kuraki's focus was split, much of his attention occupied with controlling Mechamaru. On the other hand, Aizawa's thoughts lingered on something troubling, the words Sir Nitai had spoken before their departure. Kuraki is suspicious. There was no concrete evidence, but coming from All Might's former sidekick, the accusation carried weight. I hope he's wrong about you, Kuraki, Aizawa thought silently, his expression unchanging. Swish! The ball zipped past Aizawa's blind spot and hit the ground. I won, sensei, Kuraki said, setting his paddle down. You have good physical control, Aizawa admitted in his usual flat tone. Want to go again? Sure. Dinner time rolled around, and the students of UA were in high spirits, enjoying the delicious feast prepared by the Wild Pussycats. Everyone seemed to be having a great time except for Kuraki. Oh! Is that a hot pot? Thanks, Kuraki. Kirishima exclaimed as a steaming hot pot floated toward his end of the table, landing gently in front of him. Kuraki sighed inwardly. How long do I have to keep doing this? He wondered, moving more plates of food from the kitchen to the students with his quirk. Though he wasn't cooking, he was effectively managing the entire dining process. That's the spirit, young man. Pixie Bob said with a wide grin, ruffling his hair with her paw-like hand. Do you not feel ashamed of using child labor? He deadpanned. Not at all, she replied without missing a beat. Kuraki gave her a long, unamused stare. Kuraki, bring more rice. Someone called. Another plate floated from the kitchen and landed neatly in front of Zero. I must say, your quirk is very useful, Pixie Bob continued, withdrawing her hand. Her smile grew mischievous. And you're strong, too. In 2 or 3 years, you'll be amazing. I'm calling dibs on you, young man. Don't forget you touched my tail first. Kurakai's expression turned skeptical. Are you really that desperate? He muttered under his breath, choosing not to voice his thoughts aloud. He had no desire to end up washing even more dishes as punishment. But he soon regretted staying silent. Wow! I'd love to have a husband like you! Pixie Bob exclaimed, watching Kurakai wash dishes at lightning speed with his quirk. Meanwhile, Kurakai stared blankly into the void, questioning his life choices. For a fleeting moment, the thought of joining the cooking industry crossed his mind. Now, don't be mad, Pixie Bob teased. Here, I'll let you touch my tail again. It's fake anyway, Kurakai replied flatly. Meow. It's not fake. She protested. I asked Hero Tiger. He told me it's part of the costume. Tisk. Pixie Bob clicked her tongue in frustration. After a moment, a mischievous glint returned to her eyes. Meow, but do you know where the tail attaches to? She leaned slightly forward, lifting her hips with an exaggerated motion. Kurakai turned to her with a serious expression. Are you really that desperate? For a brief moment, silence hung in the air. To Kurakai's surprise, instead of lashing out, Pixie Bob dropped to her knees and began drawing circles on the floor, muttering dramatically. To Kurakai's surprise, instead of lashing out, Pixie Bob dropped to her knees and began drawing circles on the ground, muttering dramatically. I was just trying to lighten the mood, maybe test the waters. But no, of course, I get rejected. Again. This is why I'm still single. Who even needs a soulmate anyway? Not Pixie Bob, that's for sure. Nope. Just me and my unappreciated efforts. Forever. Her voice cracked slightly as she furiously traced another circle into the floor, her expression swinging wildly between exaggerated self-pity and melodramatic despair. Desperate? You think I'm desperate? I'll have you know I'm a catch. Look at me. I'm strong, I'm stylish, and I've got charm. But no, nobody sees it. Maybe I should just go live with the animals in the wild, at least they'd appreciate me. Kurakai felt a small pang of guilt flicker in his chest. Her over-the-top theatrics reminded him of his own struggles during his lonely past. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure whether to speak up. Just as he opened his mouth, Pixie Bob suddenly sprang to her feet, brushing imaginary dirt off her knees with a dramatic flourish. All right, pity party's over. Back to work. The dishes won't clean themselves, you know. She declared with her signature confident grin, as if the entire breakdown had never happened. Kurakai blinked at her abrupt mood shift. I don't understand this woman, he thought. Adults are so much trickier to deal with than kids. Shaking his head, he returned to washing the remaining dishes. When he was finally done, Kurakai made his way toward the bathhouse, hoping for a moment of peace. Inside the bathhouse, Eraserhead sat naked in the steaming hot spring, his head resting on the edge. He glanced up as Kurakai entered. Oh, you didn't bathe yet? Come in, Aizawa said flatly, gesturing toward the water. Kurakai stared blankly at him for a moment. After blinking twice, he pulled out his phone and held it to his ear. Hello, police? There's a child molester here. Aizawa sighed, his expression completely unamused. If you don't want to come in, then leave. All right, it was a joke, sensei, Kurakai said, setting his phone aside. He quickly rinsed himself off before stepping into the hot spring and settling down across from Aizawa. The two sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds coming from the gentle bubbling of the water. How long are you going to stare? Sensei. Aizawa turned his head away from Kurakai, unwilling to look at him. Feeling bored, Kurakai's attention drifted toward the wooden fence separating the men's and women's baths. From the other side, he could hear the faint voices of Pixie Bob, Ragdoll, and Mandalay. Noticing his gaze, Aizawa narrowed his eyes. Kurakai, what are you doing? I think the heroes are on the other side, Kurakai replied, still staring at the fence. You're not thinking of doing something disrespectful, are you? Kurakai shrugged, turning back to face his teacher. Why would I? After all, I'm not a 30-year-old single man who's never held hands with a woman before. Aizawa's body stiffened, his hands twitching as he fought the urge to strangle the boy. Taking a deep breath, he replied in a low, controlled voice, I'm single by choice. Is that what you tell yourself? Self-hypnosis? Kurakai asked with a smirk, rubbing his ear in mock amusement. Aizawa's red-rimmed eyes glared at him for a moment before he turned his gaze back to the water. Your bad habits are getting out of hand, he said, his voice serious. I'm your teacher. Aren't you afraid I'll punish you for overstepping your bounds? Kuraki leaned back lazily. Nope. Not at all. Aizawa's eyebrow twitched. It seems you're underestimating me. I'll have you know I once expelled an entire class of students before. You're arrogant, Kuraki, Aizawa continued, his tone sharp. Whether it was during the Momo incident, the stain attack, or your careless attitude toward others, you need to learn discipline. Kuraki met his gaze calmly. How about I help you hook up with Pixie Bob? Her tail's fake, though. What? Aizawa blinked, caught off guard. You're both similar in age and single. Honestly, she's desperate enough that it might work out, Kuraki added as if he were stating a simple fact. Without another word, Aizawa stood up, grabbed his towel, and left the bathhouse. Kuraki watched him go before turning his attention back to the fence. Even Eraserhead doesn't want you, Kuraki muttered under his breath. On the other side of the fence, Pixie Bob froze. God damn it, brat! No! Don't stop me! Let me go! Let me go, I'll teach him a lesson! As shouts erupted in the background, Kuraki leaned back against the edge of the hot spring, gazing up at the night sky. A small smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he let the chaos wash over him like soothing music. Chapter 32, Villain's Attack, Part 1. The next day, students of UA were put through a variety of tough exercises to help improve their quirks. Bakugo kept releasing his explosive sweat towards the sky while shouting die. Todoroki kept freezing and burning his surroundings to be able to use both his quirks at the same time. The tape guy, whose name he forgot, kept throwing out large amounts of tape from his arms. In short, everyone was working very hard to improve themselves. Yes, everyone. Except him. Why am I stuck here? Kuraki wondered, sitting on the ground surrounded by trees and vegetation. Unlike his despondent self, Hero Ragdoll, sitting in front of him, was as cheerful as always. All right, student, let's start your counseling class, she said, holding a notebook and pen in her hands. Kuraki took in a deep breath to calm himself. He could tell with his eyes closed that it must be Eraserhead's revenge against him. Okay, let's get started. How are you feeling today? Is the weather good? What do you think about the wind? How was breakfast? Oh, did you sleep well last night? Kuraki gave her a long face. Ragdoll continued as if he didn't exist. Looks like we're a bit shy today. That's okay. You don't have to spill everything all at once. Let's play a quick game first. I'll ask you 3 silly questions, and you can answer however you want. Deal? Kuraki grabbed his face and sighed. Okay, let's start for real this time, she said with her signature smile. Her big eyes are unsettling to look at. First question. Anything fun on your mind lately? She asked casually. Resisting the urge to facepalm, he replied. Just the usual. Training, studying, surviving the chaos of Class 1A. She asked, chaos, hey? I've seen the reports. You guys are wild. So tell me, Kuraki, if you had to rank your class in terms of craziness, who's at the top? And where do you think you fall on that list? Top? Probably Bakugo. The guy's a walking explosion. Me? I'm more grounded. Someone has to keep their head on straight while the others are losing theirs, especially a single 30-year-old man suffering from depression. Ooh, the voice of reason in the storm, hey? That's a pretty big responsibility. So, when things get messy, like, say, you're up against some bad, is what's your go-to move? Charge in, hang back, or something else? She tilts her head adorably while carefully observing his expression. Depends. If it's a fight I can win, I'll take the lead. If not, I'll try to think of some way to reason with them. Oh ho ho. A thinker, hey? I like that. So, let's say you've got someone dangerous cornered. They're giving you trouble, causing harm, and they're not listening to reason. What's your next move? It was only now. Kuraki felt something was wrong. His gaze fixed on Hero Ragdoll's large eyes. It was really unsettling. This doesn't feel like a normal counseling session. He decided to test the waters. I'd neutralize them. Quickly. Whatever stops them from hurting anyone else. She suddenly interrupted. Efficient. I get that. But what if, let's say they're not completely bad. Maybe they've got a reason for what they're doing, something that pushed them into it. Does that change anything for you? Is she trying to gauge something? Maybe. If they've got a good reason, I'd still stop them, but I might give them a chance to explain themselves. Depends on what they've done. Interesting, interesting. You're like a puzzle, Kuraki. Lots of layers. Okay, last hypothetical, I promise. Again she didn't let him finish and pressed forth in a slightly loud voice. Let's say you had the chance to do anything with your quirk. No rules, no limits. What's your ultimate goal? I think I understand now. Kuraki smiled in his mind. Of course, I will protect everyone, I'm a hero after all, he replied as a matter of fact. Then what if you weren't a hero? Even if I was a civilian I would. What if you were a villain? She silently activated her quirk to watch his every action. Villain? Why would you say something like that, teacher? Kuraki was feeling a vague sense of excitement. Oh haha. Don't worry. Don't worry. Kiddo. It's just a hypothetical question. Using his cursed energy, he was able to identify a small electronic device hidden under Hero Ragdoll's fake paws. With this silent play of words, hiding hidden intentions, Kuraki felt ecstatic. If it was someone else then they would have tried to play dumb, acting ignorant to play safe. But, what is the point? Even if he tells her he wants to destroy the world, what can she do? Even if he praises villains, what can she do? Is it wrong to express your opinion? It is the fundamental right given to every person. Regardless of how terrible his thought might be. As long as he has not done it, or rather there is nothing to prove that he has done it. Innocent until proven guilty. What? They will say I leaked their information to the League to villains? That I am the spy? Then let them. These 6 eyes are not for show, the only thing it will end up doing would be to bring his original plan forward and nothing else. If you want to hear, then listen well to my thoughts. If I was a villain. A smile appeared on Kuraki's face. I would of course act as one. The pen in Hero Ragdoll's hand froze. Still maintaining the smile on her face she asked. What does that mean? Student Kuraki. There was hesitation in her voice. If I choose to be a villain, then that will be it. I will become a villain. He continued in a steady voice. I believe people should take a decision and go through with it. He clenched his palms. Regardless of the consequences, regardless of everything else. Once I make a decision, I will see it until the end. Hero Ragdoll tilted her head in confusion and asked. Then you will hurt innocent people? If you were a villain. I will do everything a villain is supposed to do. He replied as a matter of fact. She was stunned. For a moment she couldn't understand why a kid in school, someone as young as him, would have such extreme thoughts. This is not good. Her eyes shook for a moment. It seems you have a lot of work ahead of you, Eraser. At first she took this little job simply for fun, to tease the little ones while also fulfilling Eraserhead's request. Oh, ho ho. My, Kuraki, you've got quite the flair for the dramatic. You sound like a villain in a movie trailer. I will do everything a villain is supposed to do. So intense. She let out a light-hearted laugh, though her eyes subtly studied his every move. But let's get real for a second. If you were a villain, wouldn't that mean throwing away all the hard work you've put into becoming a hero? Seems like a waste to me, don't you think? Finally she asked the real question. So tell me, Kuraki, are you a hero or a villain? Of course. Kuraki and Mechamaru replied at the same time. I am a hero. I am a villain. I am neither. But only he heard his inner voice. Eraserhead was sitting quietly on the sofa with a pair of headphones in his ears, listening to Kuraki's little counseling. What will I do with this brat? Letting out a light sigh, he took off his headphones and let his back relax on the sofa. In no time the day ended and night arrived. Okay, let's play a game. The ones who failed the test were taking extra classes while those who passed decided to play a scary game. Then let's draw lots. 4 teams of 2 students each was quickly formed, only Midoriya was left because of the uneven number of students. Sorry Midoriya, but you will have to deal with it. Why me? Kuraki looked at the slip he drew, then saw the same one in Momo's hands. Kuraki-kun, it seems we are a team, Momo said with a slight relief in her voice, while peeking at Bakugo and Todoroki. Just then Azui suddenly appeared before her. Momo-chan, can we exchange draws? Her big eyes stared at Momo with expectations. Azui-san. Momo hesitated and held the lot tightly in her hand. But after some time passed, she gave in and let Azui take her place. She couldn't help but sigh seeing Kuraki leave with Azui. I feel so out of place. Okako thought helplessly in her mind, she was Azui's original partner. Villain's hideout. Shigaraki, is it alright to let them go on their own? Kurogiri asked in a hesitant voice. Don't worry Kurogiri, those guys aren't so weak. Shigaraki waved his hand, telling Kurogiri to take it easy. You trust them so much? Shigaraki laughed. Of course I trust them, they are strong, but most of all. A creepy smile appeared on his face. I believe my friend will never let me down. Chapter 33, Villain's Attack, Part 3. Dabi looked back at Mechamaru and asked with a smile on his face. Then how should we go about this? Mr. Second in command. His voice filled with ridicule, not taking Mechamaru's position seriously at all. Mechamaru replied plainly, we will move as planned. Tisk, why do I have to listen to a mechanical bastard like you? A suppressed voice filled with killing intent came out from a cloaked figure standing at the back. But before Mechamaru could reply, swing! A knife was placed on Muscular's neck. Don't say anything bad about Mecha-chan, Himiko Toga said in a cold voice while staring at Muscular with dead eyes. Now! Don't fight among yourselves, Twice tried his best to soothe the situation. But Muscular simply stared back at him with a vicious gaze stopping him in track, then he turned back to look down at Toga, and said in a crazy tone. B*tch you dare to raise your knife against me. Muscles started covering his entire body, making Toga retreat. Oi, isn't this getting out of hand? Dabi smiled, preparing to look at a good show. Toga silently put back her small knife, and then suddenly 3 pairs of sharp black blades extended from the knuckles of the glove. The sharp light from the blades actually made Muscular feel a bit threatened. Clicking his tongue in annoyance, he raised his arm to punch Toga. But before he could, "I'll only tell you this once." A cold, emotionless voice rang out throughout the place, making them stop. "Stop it! Like hell, I would!" Taking his warning as a joke, Muscular shouted and suddenly changed his target from Toga to Mechamaru. As the fist was approaching Mechamaru's back, "I gave you a chance." An indifferent voice reached Muscular's ears. And in the next moment, he was ignited in flames. An inhuman feeling of pain reached Muscular's spool, making him open his mouth and scream in pain. Arg! A mechanical arm grabbed Muscular's mouth, stopping him from screaming. "Don't blow our cover!" Mechamaru's green odd-like eyes filled Muscular's vision. The scene left everyone stunned. Wow! Wow! He's strong! He's powerful, Twice commented in a scared but excited voice. Mecha-chan, kill him, Toga simply showed her support. Dabi remained silent, quietly watching the red flames without blinking. The others couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spine seeing that Muscular, who was supposed to be strong as hell, was subdued so quickly. "I don't think it's a good idea to kill our companions." "Yes," Mr. Compass commented, adjusting his hat. At the same time, the flame burning on Muscular vanished, revealing Muscular's actual body with all of his muscles burned. Mechamaru stopped at the end moment, refraining from killing him. He still had use after all. Letting go of his mouth, Mechamaru let Muscular fall back on the ground. "Please remember, everyone." His voice attracted their attention. "I am your friend." Mechamaru turned away from Muscular. "So let's stay as friends, okay?" The green orb for eyes seemed to stare straight at their souls. "Yes, Mecha-chan, you're my best friend." Toga suddenly shouted. "Oh ho! Then can we friends as well?" Twice suddenly raised his hand and asked. Mechamaru simply nodded in turn, expressing his agreement. "A lot of unnecessary time has been wasted." Mechamaru's gaze landed on the camp in the middle of the forest. Begin. Surrounded by trees, Kuraki and Azui were walking side by side. "Kuraki-kun, do you feel scared?" Azui suddenly asked, turning her head towards him. "If so, you can hold my hand." She replied without waiting for him and extended her hand with a blush on her face. Looking at her outstretched hand, Kuraki smiled and grabbed it. "Sure, Frogo." It was soft and warm. He suddenly felt Azui's grip tighten. Looking back, he could see her face turning beet red. "Is this youth?" Kuraki let out an inner sigh, lamenting how a 30-year-old virgin teacher could never experience it in his life. That K Kuraki-kun, it's not Frogo, it's Furopai. It's about time. Kuraki thought in his mind while Ajui's voice came to a sudden halt. What is this smoke? Is it a special effect? Ajui asked in a curious voice, wondering if the other team was responsible for it. It's poisonous, hold your breath. Kuraki's sudden voice startled her, but seeing his serious expression, she quickly held her breath, not daring to breathe in. Kuraki-kun, what happened? I don't know, but I have a bad feeling about this, Kuraki replied, shaking his head. Let's get out of here first. Tightly holding her hand, Kuraki started running in the opposite direction. Even though she was in an unpredictable situation, Ajui felt inexplicably safe and relieved, since Kuraki was with her. While Kuraki and Ajui were running away, the other students were in a terrible situation. Let him go, Midoriya shouted in a loud voice, staring at Muscular, who was holding the boy hostage. But instead of getting excited like in the original series, Muscular remained vigilant and used the boy as a hostage to control Midoriya. The unforgettable burning sensation scared the shit out of him. Damn it, dot. On another site, Spinner and Magna were holding Hero Pixie Bob hostage. Should I smash her skull? Magna asked, putting the heavy metal pillar on top of Pixie Bob's head. Hero Tiger and Mandalay stared at them with clenched fists, wanting to rush up and save their companion but couldn't. Damn, what is this guy? Just die, Bakugo shouted and broke the teeth Nomu's attack. Bakugo, we need to leave, this gas is poisonous, dot, Todoroki shouted, covering his mouth. Shut up, you half and half bastard, dot. Everything went to chaos. Simply because Midoriya was unable to beat Muscular like the original and provide support to others. Mechamaru silently looked at everything. The micro-insect bots he created gave him a clear view of everything. There was even a Momo with razor blades all over his body standing beside him. Shigaraki gave it to him, telling him to use it as he saw fit. In the original, this Momo was supposed to injure Momo, but this time he kept it by his side, allowing Momo to quickly create gas masks and distribute it to others. They were even making their way toward the middle of the smoke where the one responsible for it was present. Finally, there was Aizawa, who was stuck in place by twice clone of Dabi. Sensing the movement behind him, Mechamaru turned to look back at Mr. Compass. You managed to sense my arrival even though I was trying my best to stay silent. Mr. Compass took off his hat and gave him a respectful bow. Did you capture her? Of course. Just like you told me. Mr. Compass took out a small blue ball and threw it at him. Grabbing it easily, Mechamaru focused his gaze on it, seeing Hero Ragdoll's figure inside it. Just a villain playing his role. He muttered in a voice only he could hear. Go and capture Bakugo. Okay. Mr. Compass shrugged his shoulders and went away. Mechamaru's gaze focused on Aizawa, who has managed to subdue Dabi's clone and was making his way towards Hero Tiger and Mandalay. Now what will you do, sensei? Chapter 34, Aizawa's Trouble. After smashing Dabi's clone to mud, Aizawa hurriedly ran towards Hero Tiger and Mandalay's location. What are they after? His mind kept working in high speed, trying to go through all possibilities. How many of them are there? And most importantly, how did they find this place? A feeling of unease surrounded his mind. Suddenly a flame burst out from the side, rushing towards him. But as if he has a third eye, Hero Eraser turned high body, dodging it and attacking Dabi's clone at the same time. Tisk, is this the strength of a pro hero? Before he could finish, a kick landed squarely on his face, deforming it into mud and disappearing. After dealing with the clone, Eraser turned back around and continued on his track. Hey Dabi! This is not what we promised Mechamaru. What if he finds out? Twice hurriedly asked in a nervous voice. Mechamaru did indeed find out using his mechanical bugs. We simply tried our best, it's not our fault Eraser is so strong, Dabi replied, shrugging his shoulders, looking unconcerned. But with a closer look, anyone will be able to see a strange light passing through Dabi's eyes. The scene of Mechamaru using such strong flames seems to be imprinted in his memory. At the same time, Momo and her group were quickly making their way toward the center of the fog. What they failed to notice was Toga staring at them silently from the bushes, looking for a chance to strike. I'll end up dying if I fought against so many of them. Her gaze focused on Okako. Let's look for the moment to strike, I can't let Mecha-chan down. Her eyes glowed with dangerous light. Hero Eraser finally managed to find Tiger and Mandalay. But their situation was anything but ideal. Tiger was injured all over and breathing heavily, protecting the injured Mandalay behind his back, Pixie Bob was unconscious and tightly held hostage. Narrowing his eyes, Eraser silently came behind Spinner and Magna. Hey, how long are you going to struggle? Before Magna could finish her sentence, a kick landed on the back of her head, knocking her out. What? Yo! Before Spinner could address the sudden intruder, a giant cat fist landed on his abdomen, making him lose breath. This is for Pixie Bob. With a loud shout, Hero Tiger landed an uppercut on Spinner. Aizawa followed through and quickly binded the two of them together. Pixie Bob! Wake up! Tiger carefully shaked Pixie Bob, but she showed no reaction. Damn it! These bastards! He stared at Spinner and Magna with hateful eyes. Tiger, we need to help the students, Mandalay said in a low voice, her face paled due to excessive blood loss on the leg injury she received from Spinner. Eraserhead's mind kept moving. He looked at the injured hero team Pussycats and then at the villains. He wanted to leave them to the hero team and go support the students, but with their current condition, if he were to leave, the villains could wake up and overwhelm them. What are they after? What is their goal? Eraserhead thought deeply in his mind. Think. How have they been moving until now? Are they stalling for time? His eyes contracted, and he again stared at Team Pussycat's condition and the captured villains. The villains were winning but didn't go for the kill. His thoughts became even more confused. If their goal is not to kill, then are they here to capture someone? The more he thought, the more things seemed to clear up. But who? And why? Still, he couldn't find the end answer. It was impossible for him to deduct that the villains were here for Bakugo. This is bad, everything seems to be going according to the opponent's plans. Finally making a decision, Eraserhead said to Hero Mandalay. Mandalay sent a message to all the students. They are allowed to use force under my name. Mandalay nodded weakly, but just before she was about to use her quirk, he grabbed her shoulder. Staring straight into her eyes, he said in a hesitant but firm voice. Also tell Kuraki to flip the board. Hearing his vague words, Mandalay paused for a moment but still used her quirk to inform everyone. Now only you can change this situation, Kuraki. Hero Eraser sighed. I hope I'm not wrong about you. And in the next moment, under Eraserhead's incredulous gaze, the ground below his feet started shaking. What is happening? Is it Pixie Bob? Hero Mandalay fell silent. And it wasn't only her. The heroes, villains, and students. They all stared in wonder at the sheer display of inhuman might. A giant piece of forest. It was floating in the air. That crazy bastard. The corners of Hero Eraser's mouth twitched unconditionally. Originally I didn't plan to make an appearance this time. Kuraki though in his mind, staring down at everyone from above. But teacher, you told me to flip the table. The corners of his mouth raised up to form an arc. How come I didn't think of such a wonderful idea? Behind him, Azui tightly wrapped herself around a tree, looking down with a stupefied look on her face. At the same time, congratulations on collecting 1000 faith points, receiving Shoko Iiri's ability Reverse Curse Technique. A healer. Chapter 35, Me vs I. Just what? Villain Muscular couldn't believe his eyes, witnessing the incredible marvel taking place before his eyes. Since he was standing on a hill, the view he got was much clearer than everyone else. What if that were to fall down on me? A chill went through his body merely thinking of such a possibility. At the same time, only for a moment he unknowingly let down his guard. But that was enough for Midoriya to make his move. Smash! Oh my! Oh my! Dabby! Dabby! Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Twice screamed at the top of his lungs, watching the giant piece of land slowly shift above them, covering the sky. I don't know. Dabby smiled helplessly in response, even he himself was doubting his vision. Momo and her group were also stunned. A moment ago they barely managed to locate the villain responsible for the fog, and just when they were about to attack him, the fog was suddenly washed away by tremendous wind pressure. But what appeared in their vision, instead of clear sky, was a giant piece of land. Hidden in the bushes, Toga glanced at the sky before retracting her gaze and focusing on her target. She felt the opportunity to strike will soon come. While everyone was staring at the sky like fools, Mechamaru was carefully controlling his mechanical flies to capture different angles of the scene. He will later upload it online. After he was satisfied with the shot, he made the robots go on standby to capture clearly what was about to happen. Finally, he turned towards the Nomu and said, "Capture Bakugo." The Nomu nodded and walked into the forest. With a single thought, sharp blades extended from Mechamaru's arms. The new upgrades are quite nice. Flame started gathering under his legs. Then with a large blast, his figure launched into the air. Concentrating a high amount of flames in his hand, Mechamaru stared at the giant mass and waved his arms, sending waves of beam-like energy flying through. Hell Spider! The beams effortlessly cut through the floating island, breaking it down into pieces of even length. Was that Endeavor's move? Hero Mandalay muttered in a confused voice. Tiger, hold them down. I'll go and help Kuraki. Hero Eraserhead suddenly shouted and rushed towards the mechanical figure floating in the air. Even with such a big distance between them, he gave Eraser an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Hold on, kid, I'm coming. Mechamaru stared at the several pieces of rubble, floating in the sky instead of falling down. Amidst the debris was the figure of Kuraki floating upside down. As if having found his target, a giant flame erupted from Mechamaru's body, forming a sphere of flame that lightened up the surroundings, giving everyone a clear picture of what was going on. Turn to ash. Mechamaru raised his hand towards Kuraki, making everyone's heart stop beating. Shit, Eraserhead gritted his teeth while using his quirk to its full strength. Unfortunately, it seems he was still too far away. Just as Mechamaru was about to launch his attack, a calm voice entered everyone's ears. Throughout the heavens and the earth, with one hand over his head and the other below, he made a strikingly familiar pose. At the same time, a small red dot, made up of unknown energy, appeared between his fingers. I alone am the honored one. Mechamaru and Kuraki released their attacks at the same time. Curse Technique Reversal Red. Maxim Meteor. Two ultimate moves collided. A red mass that repelled everything versus a huge flame wants to burn everything to ash. For a moment they seemed to be at par. But then, the red mass pushed back the flame. Mecha-chan. Toga hurriedly stood up, blowing away her cover, and shouted in worry. Tornado of Terror. Mechamaru's unresigned voice rang out as his figure was enveloped by the red energy and pushed away in the distance. The massive flame which seemed to burn the world was gone. And the only one left standing was Kuraki. Loud cheers erupted from the students below. But instead of getting excited, Kuraki looked at Mr. Compass, who was being chased by Todoroki after capturing Bakugo. The Momo was busy dealing with Shoji and Midoriya. Seeing that Mr. Compass was about to be turned into ice, he withdrew his power, making the blocks suddenly fly down and fall between Todoroki and Mr. Compass, successfully separating them. Now then. Time to faint. Closing his eyes, his figure suddenly started falling down. Those watching thought at the same time. If he was to fall from such a height, it would result in instant death. Aizawa watched helplessly as Kuraki somehow fell in a direction completely opposite to his. How come he's always too far? What was the use of all that running? Midoriya ignored the Nomu and hurriedly launched himself into the air, damaging his leg. I must make it. Screaming in his mind, Midoriya tried to intercept Kuraki's fall. But somehow a piece of rock suddenly appeared before him, stopping him on track. Kuraki-kun. Along with Midoriya's unresigned voice, Kuraki continued falling. Is it my imagination, or is he falling slower? A student wondered in his mind. Then in the dense forest, Kuraki's figure disappeared from everyone's vision. At the same time, Momo trembled in fear, seeing Mechamaru's injured figure suddenly appear before them. Although he was broken all over, his green orb-like eyes seemed to send shivers down their spine. Mecha-chan. Toga, who was being held down by Kendo, shouted in joy. Mechamaru's gaze focused on Kendo. Let go. Controlling her crazily beating heart, she bit down on her lip and slowly released Toga. As soon as she was released, Toga grabbed Kendo's arm, using her metal glove, making the syringe pierce her skin and draw blood. Barely controlling the urge to push her away, Toga stood in place, not daring to make a move. After she was done, Toga didn't stop and went up to Eureka. Let me borrow some blood, okay? With a creepy smile on her face, Toga pushed the needle inside Eureka's thigh and easily drew her blood. Next, her gaze landed on Momo. But before she was about to move, it's time to leave. Mechamaru's voice reached her ears. Mecha-chan. Just one more. Just one more. Toga stared at him with a pleading look. All right. Yay. You're the best, Mecha-chan. Toga turned towards Momo, making her fall on her back. Oh, are you scared? Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Toga got on top of Momo, pressing her against the ground. I'm just going to suck a little blood. Enduring the pain in her arm, Momo moved her mind to think of some solution. But no matter how much she thought, she couldn't think of a way to beat Mechamaru. But still, a bold idea suddenly came in Momo's mind. Suck suck. While Toga was distracted, she silently attached a small transmitter to her metal glove. Mechamaru saw her little trick but didn't say anything. Just when Momo was feeling weak because of the loss of blood. Mecha-chan, I'm done. You can burn them now. Toga ran back to Mechamaru and said in a cute voice. But her words only made everyone else feel despair. Let's go. Mechamaru simply turned around and started walking away. Ah! Mecha-chan. Wait for me. Are not going to kill us. Everyone thought at the same time. Or they can't. Some of their eyes shone, but in the end, they suppressed themselves from making a move. Because it wasn't worth the risk, especially since they were leaving. Thanks, Frogo, Kuraki muttered in a weak voice, lying in Ajui's bosom. I didn't do anything, you slowed down your fall at the last moment. Ajui blushed and muttered in a weak voice, clearly feeling Kuraki's hot breath against her chest. She couldn't understand how Kuraki somehow fell exactly where she was. Was it deliberate? Did he feel safe with me? Even in such a dangerous situation her mind couldn't help but wander, making her face blush even harder. After hearing her voice, Kuraki suddenly closed his eyes and fell asleep. Seeing the scene, Ajui hesitantly raised her arm before carefully patting his head. Everything was going well. But then, Eraserhead suddenly popped up out of nowhere. Kuraki. Ajui. Sensei. Ajui hurriedly let go of Kuraki, letting him fall face first on the ground. Kuro-chan. Understanding what she just did, Ajui was about to grab Kuraki again, but Eraser beat her to it. Carefully turning him around, he checked his breath. Seeing that it was stable, Hero Eraserhead sighed in relief. Carrying Kuraki on his back, Aizawa told Ajui to follow him as he made his way back to the cottage. While being carried, without anyone noticing, Kuraki suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Eraserhead with murderous intent. Sensing the sudden attack, Eraser hurriedly turned his head, but all that greeted him was Kuraki's peacefully sleeping face. Chapter 36, Countermeasures. Mechamaru. Who? Which bastard did this to you? Shigaraki shouted at the top of his lungs, staring fixedly at Mechamaru's injured figure. There were several cracks all over his body, and a part of his abdomen seemed to be missing as well. Kill. I must kill him. It is all right, I can recover quickly. Mechamaru started explaining that the injury wasn't that serious. Finally, after some convincing, Shigaraki calmed down and turned to look at the other League of Villain members with cold eyes. You trash-like bastards who let my friend get hurt. His red eyes behind the hand mask sent shivers down their spine. What's the point of having all of you? Shigaraki. Mechamaru suddenly interrupted, stopping him from continuing. It wasn't their fault, Kuraki was simply too strong. Releasing a long sigh, he stared into the void as if remembering his intense battle. Him again. Shigaraki tightly clenched his teeth, making a creaking sound. Nonetheless, we still managed to complete the mission. Mechamaru took two small green balls, containing Hero Ragdoll and Bakugo. Seeing the scene, Shigaraki fell silent, then he smiled widely and said. I knew you wouldn't let me down, my best friend. Suddenly the television behind them flickered. Good work, Mechamaru, bring Ragdoll to me. After leaving a short message, his voice disappeared. Scratching his chin, Shigaraki turned to Mechamaru and said. It seems teacher has decided to meet you. Although Mechamaru appeared calm on the surface, only he knew his mind was racing wildly inside, trying to think why AFO would suddenly want to see him. Kurogiri sent Mechamaru to teacher. Yes, Shigaraki. Kurogiri's shadow moved and enveloped Mechamaru's body, sending him away. After Mechamaru was gone, Shigaraki turned his gaze towards the new members. Now then. He stopped scratching his neck and stared at them with emotionless eyes. Let me hear your excuse for letting my friend get hurt. Mechamaru was teleported inside a dark room. The only source of light were the various Nomua preservation chambers, which kept emitting weird green light. Fortunately, with his installed night vision, Mechamaru was able to see everything clearly. Moving his legs, he walked up to a large mechanical chamber at the end. Through the small mirror at the top he could see the face of the biggest villain in MHA, All For One. I agree, it is not the most pleasant sight to look at. AFO's unsettling voice was transmitted by the speakers installed outside the metal chamber. Take a good look, Mechamaru. A weird light passed through Mechamaru's green eyes. AFO continued without stopping. I once stood at the pinnacle of all, looking down on everyone and everything equally. He seems to be reminiscing. I was the so-called enemy of the world. But now I am forced to live, survive relying on these machines. Mechamaru sensed a hint of deep-seated anger in his voice. He asked, "Why are you telling me this?" A big smile formed on AFO's half-destroyed face as if he was waiting for him to ask this question. "Because I believe you two will end up just like me." Mechamaru interjected, "We are not the same. Are we truly that different? Now that you are here before me, I can conclude." AFO's voice rang out with indescribable charm. "You truly wish to oppose the world, ha 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 ha." His suppressed laughter enveloped the place. Similar but at the same time different from Shigaraki, who wants to destroy everything because he enjoys it. You want to oppose everything because you too enjoy it. Isn't that right? Mechamaru. Nope, I just want faith points. Mechamaru replied, "So what if you are correct?" Ah, how similar it is to that Demon King story I read. All for one stopped speaking, making the room fall silent. Take out Ragdoll. Mechamaru threw the ball on the ground, making Hero Ragdoll appear before them. As soon as Ragdoll appeared, she was overwhelmed by the severe warning signs her quirk flooded her with. Behind her was Mechamaru and in front of her was All for One. Her escape route was completely cut off. The feeling of complete dread spreading from AFO's made her feel a deep sense of fear and despair. She has a useful quirk. The sudden voice chilled her heart, making her fall on her back. Then under her horrified eyes, some red and black colored lines extended from the chamber and suddenly attached to her entire body. An intense feeling of pain suddenly assaulted her mind, reaching her soul. Just as she unconsciously opened her mouth to scream, a mechanical hand blocked it up. With tears rolling down her eyes, Hero Ragdoll barely managed to look in Mechamaru's direction. Her eyes looked desperately at him as if asking for help. "Stay silent." But she was meant to be disappointed. "Ha ha ha, how heartless, Mechamaru." AFO smiled. He was clearly able to instantly steal Ragdoll's quirk but deliberately chose the harsh way. It was a test for Mechamaru. The clothes covering Hero Ragdoll were suddenly shredded to pieces, making her full and mature body appear in their full view. Finally, after she stopped struggling, AFO stole her quirk and left her staring dumbly into the air. "Drop her in the green liquid." Mechamaru picked her up using his arms and dropped her inside the pod containing a green liquid. "That is all, you may leave." With AFO's voice, a familiar black shadow extended from the void, enveloping Mechamaru and taking him away. After he was gone, AFO spoke in a small voice only he could hear. "If only we had met sooner, but maybe this is also destiny." Location, UA. Inside All Might's office. With his hands supporting his head, Kuraki thought deeply in his mind. "I might just have FCKED everything up." In front of him stood All Might, the symbol of the peace, shirtless. Only this time, there was no wound on his stomach. Chapter 37 Rise. Strongest Hero. Not long after the villains left, the medical staff was quickly called. Standing still with Azui by his side, Kuraki let the medical person examine him. After seeing that he was fine except for a few minor injuries here and there, the medical person hurried to the next student. "Kuraki-kun, are you all right?" Azui asked hesitantly, seeing him staring absent-mindedly at All Might, who arrived some time ago. Just thinking about something, Kuraki narrowed his eyes. The memories of JJK's healer passed through his mind. "Kuraki, help us move the injured." "Yes." He was just about to move when All Might suddenly appeared before him and carefully grabbed the unconscious people. "You should rest, Kyakai Shounen, leave this to me, it's the least I can do." Kuraki looked at All Might crouching down to pick up Hero Mandalay and Tiger carefully. Watching his back, Kuraki couldn't help but rub his chin. A wonderful idea suddenly spurted in his mind. "Hey All Might!" "What is it, Kuraki Shounen?" All Might asked, confused, holding Tiger and Mandalay in one arm each. Kuraki pointed at his stomach area, saying with a smile, "I think I can heal your injuries." Silence enveloped the place. For a long time, All Might stood there stunned. "Hey!" A stupid voice escaped All Might's mouth. After transporting Tiger and Mandalay, All Might quickly grabbed Kuraki and ran with his inhuman speed, leaving behind the dumbstruck Azui and Midoriya, who were just talking to Kuraki. Being held by All Might like luggage, Kuraki looked left and right at the rapidly moving surroundings. What speed! His eyes lit up in amazement. Looking down, he clearly saw All Might's face. His usual smile was gone. In no time, they arrived back at UA. Putting Kuraki down on the sofa, All Might walked up and sat opposite to him, his eyes looking seriously at him. This, Kuraki Shounen, can you repeat what you said earlier? He asked in a hesitant but also slightly expectant voice. I can heal your stomach wound. Kuraki Shounen, how did you know? Finally asked the real question, Kuraki smiled. Using his cursed energy he could clearly feel Teacher Cementos hiding behind the back door with his hands on the ground ready to move at a moment's notice. It's because of my power. But isn't telekinesis? I also thought so at first, but it seems I was wrong all along. Kuraki sighed, and a lost look appeared on his face. Kuraki Shounen, what do you mean? It's not telekinesis, my power is similar to energy manipulation. Kuraki bullshitted his way through. All Might widened his eyes. Energy manipulation. Kuraki raised his hand and concentrated a large amount of cursed energy on it. Although All Might was unable to see cursed energy, with his senses he could feel something foreign moving above Kuraki's palm. It is my quirk, I call it cursed energy. Cursed energy, All Might hesitated, feeling the darkness from Kuraki's palm. I understood it while fighting Mechamaru. A small red light appeared above Kuraki's palm, stunning All Might. Now that I have a clearer understanding of my power, I can feel the terrible injury at your stomach. Kuraki stopped and suddenly turned towards the back door. I can also feel Teacher Cementos standing behind the door. All Might's pupils contracted and Cementos shook for a moment. What do you mean, Kuraki Shounen? I should be the one asking that, I only wanted to heal the teacher, but it seems I am not at all trusted. Kuraki shrugged his shoulders and sat down leisurely on the sofa. This Kuraki Shounen I can explain. While All Might was hurriedly trying to think of a solution, Cementos suddenly opened the door and walked in, then bowed to Kuraki as an apology. It was my idea, student, but... Cementos looked up at Kuraki with hopeful eyes. Can you really heal All Might? I can try. Kuraki said casually, not promising anything. That. I trust Kuraki Shounen. All Might suddenly stood up, and with a cloud of smoke, his figure suddenly deflated into a weak-looking skeleton. Cementos wanted to instinctively use his quirk to block Kuraki's sight, but seeing him unaffected by All Might's sudden made him stop. So you knew Kuraki Shounen? All Might asked in a weak voice, there was also a small feeling of relief in it. The chances of Kuraki being the spy decreased significantly in his mind. If he truly was the spy, then the League of Villains would have directly launched an assault on them by now, knowing that the symbol of the piece was nothing but a paper tiger, a mirage of his previous mighty self. Should we start? Kuraki stood up and walked up to All Might, stopping before him. All Might looked up at Kuraki. In his weak state he was a head shorter than him. Grabbing the ends of his now oversized costume, he took it off, revealing a grievous purple injury on his stomach. More than half of his stomach was gone, due to which he was unable to drink alcohol or anything too strong. This is All Might, the symbol of peace who selflessly protected everyone but himself. Then let's start. Raising his hand, Kuraki placed it on All Might's stomach, using the reverse curse technique for healing. Suddenly All Might felt a sharp pain in his stomach, followed by all over his body. Seeing Cementos's dumbfounded face, All Might want to look down, but he stopped himself, so as to not be disappointed. But it was then that All Might noticed an anomaly. Is Kuraki Shounen growing shorter? He was confused. But then he looked at Cementos, who was also growing shorter. No. Could it be? A light passed through All Might's eyes. It's done. Followed by the sudden voice, the pain in his body disappeared. Seeing Kuraki backing off, All Might stood in place with a daze. Instinctively raising his hand, he saw a big muscular palm filled with flesh and strength, completely opposite of the bony one he was familiar with. Looking down, he saw the injury which has plagued him for years, gone, replaced by well-packed and hardened ABS. All Might's eyes started trembling. Oh! All Might! Cementos, who always appeared indifferent, suddenly dropped down on his knees and started crying like a child. Meanwhile, Kuraki suddenly got a mirror from somewhere and placed it in front of All Might's face. What appeared in the mirror was a dignified-looking man with strong and attractive facial features. Raising his hand, All Might touched his face. The feeling was completely different from the skeleton he was familiar with. Shounen! Kuraki raised his head, hearing the trembling voice, touched his chin, then gave All Might a thumbs up. Welcome back, symbol of peace. Welcome back. Yes, welcome back. Tears unconsciously started falling out of All Might's eyes. He remembered the last time he cried was when his master died. Wiping away his tears with his hand, he looked at Kuraki who was giving him a thumbs up. Symbol of peace. A familiar smile appeared on All Might's face. Kuraki Shounen. All Might suddenly opened his hands and hugged Kuraki. All Might, I'm not into men, Kuraki hurriedly said, feeling All Might's battle-hardened flash enveloping him. But his voice seemed to have the opposite effect as All Might only hugged him harder. No, wait, let go. I said let go. I do not like this. Kuraki started pushing his head away from him, making All Might finally let go. How heartless, Kuraki Shounen. All Might looked hurt. If you want to hug, then hug Teacher Cementos. Kuraki pointed at the back. Cementos hurriedly whipped away his tears and started shaking his head like crazy. After walking out of All Might's office, Kuraki reflected on what happened. He noticed something incredible while he was healing All Might. The embers of Opha left inside All Might's body increased as it came into contact with cursed energy. A thoughtful look appeared on Kuraki's face. I raised it by 50% just to prevent any accident from happening in the upcoming fight. Chapter 38, Counterattack. P.S. What you guys talking about? All Might never gained cursed energy, he was simply healed. There's no proof, previous chap edited. You guys are just delulu. We will need Kuraki's help, Shota in a calm voice. Agree. Ida, Midoriya, Kirishima, and Momo hurriedly nodded, showing their approval. Suddenly one of them asked the important question. So, where is he? All five of them fell silent. Unlike all the other students of us, Kuraki was taken away by All Might. Everyone turned to look at Midoriya. Huh? Hey? I don't know where he went. Midoriya hurriedly surrendered. Then everyone suddenly turned to Ida. But unlike Midoriya, Ida, being a responsible class representative, clearly knew something. Of course. I remember his address. Fixing his glasses, Ida waited to be praised, but all he got in return was gazes that looked at him as if he was a creep. He didn't memorize all of our addresses, did he? They all shivered at the same time. Back at home, Kuraki was munching on snacks, watching television which showed UA's teachers including Aizawa apologizing for their lack of mismanagement. Suddenly a hand went for his snacks and grabbed a handful of them before retreating. With a blank look on his face, Kuraki looked at Hikari Sento, who sat beside him, and started eating his food while looking at the TV. Son, is the school really safe? You can tell Crunch me if you have any difficulty. She asked him with a worried voice while eating his snacks. Kuraki didn't know what to say, it was just some snacks, but he clearly asked her if she wanted any when he went out to buy them, and she refused. Ding! The sudden doorbell attracted their attention. Who could it be at this time? While Hikari was thinking, Kuraki had already opened the door, revealing the figure of his classmates who were supposed to be at the hospital. Mom, my friends are here, I'll go out for a while. Wait. Your friends? Invite them in. No, wait, don't leave yet. Bam. Ignoring the loud voice behind him, Kuraki turned to face them and asked in a cold voice. So who are we killing? Kuraki-kun, we're not killing anyone, Momo hurriedly shouted. Oh. Why do you seem disappointed? They all shouted in their minds. So why are you all here? Kuraki asked, feigning ignorance, even though he knew their motive. We're going to rescue Bakugo-kun, Midoriya clenched his fist and explained. With just the five of you, Kuraki rolled his eyes. That we also have you. I haven't agreed yet. And no way, Kuraki-kun. Midoriya was deflated and the others stopped thinking for a moment. Only Kirishima remained silent, looked at the scene, then turned around to leave. Then we can only save Bakugo on our own. Seeing Kirishima walking away with an attitude of I will go alone if I have to, Kuraki used his quirk and stopped him in place. Go ahead, try to leave now. Kirishima was embarrassed. Shaking his head, Kuraki discarded his plan to tease them any further and asked in a serious voice. So what's the plan? Not long after Kuraki left with them, Teacher Midnight appeared outside his house. Wearing her hero costume, she rings the doorbell. While the door was opening up, she said in a dignified voice. Kuraki, ready up, we need your hello, good evening ma'am. Her attitude did a 180, seeing it was Hikari Sento who opened the door. Who are you? What do you want from my son? She stared at Midnight with vigilant eyes, not opening the door completely. I am a teacher at UA, Hero Midnight tried to explain. But she was stopped by Hikari's sudden question. Teacher? Then why are you wearing such revealing clothes? Ah ha ha ha. Midnight had no good answer, so she tried to laugh it off. That can you please call Kuraki? We need him for something important. My son just left the house. Hey! Villain's hideout. Bakugo was stuck to a chair with his body tied up, unable to move. He looked at the members of League of Villains with his vigilant eyes. I'll ask you one more time, aspiring hero Katsuki Bakugo. Shigaraki continued. Will you join us? With the sweat rolling down his cheek, Bakugo mustered up a smile and said. If you are going to talk in your sleep, you should go to sleep and die. Shigaraki narrowed his eyes. Why do you refuse? Didn't you see how the heroes were being criticized by the people on the TV even though they did nothing wrong? They tried their best, yet no one praises them. They take compensation for saving a life which is supposed to be priceless, right? What is a hero? What is justice? Is this society truly just? And you know. Shigaraki's red eyes started glowing. We are planning on winning. You too like winning, don't you? Looking at Bakugo's restraints, Shigaraki said. Release him. He will attack us, Dabi replied instantly. It's okay, I believe he is not stupid enough to not understand the situation. Shigaraki shrugged his shoulders. Meanwhile, Mechamaru was looking out of the one-sided window he recently installed. He could vaguely see silhouettes of police and pro-heroes silently cornering their place. Trouble. Mechamaru's sudden voice attracted their attention. Mechamaru. Shigaraki stopped speaking. A terrible possibility suddenly came into his mind. Heroes. Seeing Mechamaru nod his head, Shigaraki started scratching his neck. Kurogiryu's gate. Yes, Shigaraki. They're here. Along with Mechamaru's voice. The reinforced steel wall beside him was smashed, revealing the figure of the symbol of peace. Do we really have to do this? Kuraki asked. Currently, 5 of them were squeezing their way between the walls of the villains and their neighbor's household. Ida asked, you have a better idea? Forget that I ask. They stopped after arriving in front of a window. Let's look inside. Kuraki, get on my shoulder, Kirishima said. Kurogiri gave him a weird look. Why don't I just levitate us? That makes sense, do it, Kuraki. Kirishima gave him a thumbs up. Looking away from the idiot, he used his power to levitate all of them just enough to be able to see through the window. But as soon as they did. Are those Nomos? Momo asked in a trembling voice. Looks like the heroes are here. Kuraki's sudden voice stunned them. What did you say, Kuraki-kun? Midoriya hurriedly asked. Instead of replying, Kuraki turned his head to look at Hero Mount Lady's raised leg. And in the next moment. Boom! With a loud sound, the building along with the sleeping Nomos were destroyed in an instant.
Thanks for listening.